how are y'all doing today? My name's Diane Fryer, and I am going to show you how to ozonate your horse. So, you got to make sure you have everything first. You want 22 by 1.5 gauge needles. You want an IV extension. I take mine and I usually just hang it over my shoulder here. Of course, your ozone generator and your oxygen. Now, what I do to start out, I bought a little apron just from Home Depot because it's great to hold these syringes. The normal dose is 300 cc's. So this is a 100 cc syringe. So I have 3 of them here. So, and as I go through and I'm going to fill up these syringes, I'm just going to kind of walk you through it and tell you things to look for, etc. So the first thing I do before I even turn on the machine or turn on the oxygen or anything is I take the cap off my syringe and I pull it, because a lot of times they get kind of stiff and you want to make sure that they flow nice and easy, because if they don't flow nice and easy, that creates more friction on the syringe and makes your ozone more concentrated, which we'll get into that more as we're filling up the syringes. So we take each of them and they kind of get stuck. This one feels kind of stuck. Hopefully it'll start moving a little bit better, or we'll have to grab a different one. No, there we go. That's good. And the third one. When they do get really stiff, you just use olive oil. And you take the bottom off here. And you pull this out and you put olive oil around the ring. I don't want to touch it. You put olive oil around the ring and you put it right back in there. And then you screw this back on. I know it sounds kind of very unsanitary or unsterile, but that's what they do. And then you just do this until you've got free movement on your syringes. So we've got free movement on all of our syringes. So that's good. So the next thing I do is I turn my oxygen on. Now, normal concentration for the ozone to give your horse is you want to be right around 3%. This chart here tells you how fast your oxygen is coming out of your tank. That's this first column here. Then switch 1 right here, if you go to here is switch 1 and here is to switch 2. Now what these numbers are is these are gammas. And that is how much gammas will be put out of your tube at this flow rate of oxygen. A gamma, and I'm going to give you ballparks here, because the one thing as you get in and learn more about the ozone is not an exact science. It's not like you can say, okay, I'm going to use so many gammas of ozone, because it's not that, you can't be that precise with it. It's just too much of a volatile product, or whatever you want to call it. So on the average, approximately 15 gammas is going to equate to 1% of ozone. So if we want to have approximately 3% ozone that we're putting in the horse, we want to be right around 45 gammas. So at 45 gammas, if you look right here on this, at a quarter, if you look at your oxygen flow, at 1/4, on switch 2, on switch 2, it says 51.1, and that's at 1/4. So that's where I normally fill my syringes at. So my oxygen flow is going to be on 1/4, and I'm going to switch this to switch number 2. So what I do, you don't ever want to have this machine on without oxygen flowing through it. If you do, you'll burn up your machine, and no warranty is going to cover that. So I turn on the oxygen on my tank, and then I go to 1/4. So that's my first one. Your regulator is going to be different and going to go a lot lower, but this one goes to 1/4. That's what I'm using now. So then I make sure, yes, I've got the flow coming out. Doesn't feel like it's coming that fast though. Should be 1/4. Okay, so I've got flow coming. Then got too much stuff in my tool room. So then I take it and I connect it. So now I'm connected. Now I have oxygen flowing through this here. So now I'm going to feel here. And I've got some flow coming out there. Not very much. So then the next thing I do is I plug this machine in. Well, I've got this going on. Now I'm going to go over to, you see this light come on. Keep dropping this, it's not good. That light comes on and I go to switch 1 and then I go to switch 2. So now what I should be having coming out is 51 gammas, which is approximately 3%. Now, the slower the oxygen, you'll notice this, the slower the oxygen goes through the machine, the more ozone that it gets in it. So if your syringes are really stiff, that's going to cause for more pressure and give you actually more ozone. That's why I say there's not an exact science to this stuff. You kind of get a rough guesstimate. So then what I do is once I have it flowing through, and I can smell it now so I don't even need to, but normally I'll take it and take a couple whiffs, and yes, we definitely have ozone. So I put one of my needles on my IV extension, and I get that ready so that way I don't have to mess with it. I'll put that over, and then I'm going to get some tape. There we go. So I'm going to use this on the horse. I want to have everything ready because you don't want the ozone to sit in the syringes. The reason being the half-life of an ozone singlet is, if I remember correctly, I want to say it's like 4 seconds or 7 seconds. It's a very short half-life. So once these syringes get filled up, you want to go straight to your horse and you want to ozonate them right away because you want the breaking down of the ozone to happen in the horse's body, not in your syringe. So the way the ozone works is oxygen as we know it is O2. Ozone is O3. Because oxygen doesn't like being in 3 parts, it breaks down. And it breaks down to O2 and this little singlet. That little singlet is the police officer. It runs around the body and it does whatever it needs to. That's the ozone factor. So, take this and I just took it onto here and I let it push out to where it needs to be. There's that. Take that off. Then I take my next syringe. Now, if I haven't used my syringes in a while, but I used these just not long ago, I'll take it out to about there. And then I push it out just to kind of make sure I've got nothing but the straight oxygen in there and that I don't have any other contaminants in there. Just a safety thing. But not mandatory, but just something I do. Okay, there's 2. Then what I do when I walk away from this machine is I count. I want to make sure I have my 3 things. And my 3 things is my syringes, my IV extension with needle on it, and tape. Now, before I walk away, I turn my machine off and I unplug it. The reason I do that is because that way I have no chance of burning up my machine by it being left on. Then I also turn off the oxygen tank because, of course, we'll run out of oxygen. Okay, now we're going to end this video and we'll start back up when we get to the horse. Okay. Cool, let's go to the horse.